yet. Now it is. No, you're fine. Can I tell you all, because I spoke at the 11 a.m. service today, and I felt like I was shouting in a mic, so to have a little bit more, like, to be able to know that I can hear myself makes me feel like I'm not going to have nodules after after service today. So welcome, everyone, to Woven. We actually have some announcements, and I have paper in front of me, so I'm kind of stressed out. Yeah. So one really cool and important things, and this is more for the non-queer people in the room. This first one is Pride Festival volunteer signups are out in the Narthex area by the TV. We need a couple more people for setup and tear down, and then we only need really like one more time covered. Other than that, I think we're pretty good, but we could use some more support with setup and tear down. And it's out there. Matt Harling will be coordinating it. And good news for everyone is, although Daniel and I are absolutely not doing anything on the Saturday except for going to Pride, we will help make sure that everything is organized and put together so that everyone can just show up and help with the part. So we'll be helping with that piece. So that's first in the way of announcements. And then the next piece is next Sunday is the Pride Sunday potluck. So instead of having a 2 o'clock service time, we're just going to extend the potluck time with games and hanging out, mostly because we'll all be dead from the day before at Pride. Hopefully not sunburnt, but for sure dead. So at the 11 o'clock service, Andrew and I will be talking with John. We don't know about what. We'll decide it this week. So so just if you would like to hear us ramble, you can show up at that time. Another kind of exciting thing that's going on actually starting in August is a woven group actually that I'm facilitating and our very own Sarah McAfee is hosting. So it's going to be Thursdays starting August the 7th at 6. There's a book we're going through. It's really a book based on a podcast. So like when I tell you that like the reading is not intense, like it's quotes, right? Like it's just a book of quotes. And the book's called We Can Do Hard Things. If you're interested in coming, see me after service. We'll get you signed up. We can get you a book. Don't worry about the cost of that. And the final thing is, if you are a vendor and you make unique, crafty things, and you are more talented than I am, we have a Family Fall Festival. I have to read it off this because I'll never get that right. Where they are asking for vendors if they want to sell things and become a part of that event. And what day is it? It's not on here.
It is September 20th.
Thank you.
From 2 to 7, I believe. PM.
There you go. So if you're interested, for this one, I'm going to send you Daniel's way to talk about that because I might forget to tell Lynn. So also just a reminder that the Kentucky Theater downtown is showing queer movies every Sunday. So if you are interested in going to any one of those are still continuing. And we just want to say welcome to all of you here in person or online. Yesterday was kind of a hard day in the political area, and so whatever it took for you to get here today, you're welcome as you are. We grieve with people, the Iranians and the Palestinians that have been injured and killed during this time, and we are thankful that all of you are here regardless of your race, your gender, your socioeconomic status. We just welcome you here as you are. All right. Daniel's going to take it away.
Yeah. So I just wanted to read a couple of poems, 2 poems from Dr. Martina McGowan, collection of poems called I Am the Rage. I highly recommend looking her up and reading her work. It's incredible. This week, with yesterday's atrocities in Iran and just the cultural upheaval that we are finding ourselves in, I have been taking comfort in this collection of works, and 2 poems in particular spoke to me, so I want to share with you today. The first one is titled Cultural Upheaval. As we ponder the next steps in our cultural overhaul, The scholars and artists' souls are set ablaze by a deluge of material that keeps us one step away from both insanity and utter despair. The crude and rude treatment repeatedly visited with a violence and a vengeance that leaves us breathless and confused. We go through the mechanical motions of our crafts and inevitably come crashing back to earth and struggle with the mundanity of everyday life. What makes us crafters special also makes us strange. Riven from the hoods of our hearts, we remain intertwined with the struggles of our people. Alas, we too fit the profile and will in time be destroyed. So if you are also a creative, also an artist, know you are not alone in feeling yuck right now.
That was so good.
Yeah, she's good. She's good. And the second poem is called Juneteenth. Since we have recently passed the Juneteenth holiday, I felt like it was almost my duty to share this. Because as a white person, there's the only thing that I can do is acknowledge the shit that's been happening and celebrate alongside my black friends. So, Juneteenth. From Lincoln to Granger to the enslaved, imprisoned, and powerless, a 2-year journey lost on the lips of a nation still embattled, and now a holiday to be celebrated by all. Freedom. A single word of curse and blessing, but the blessing was thwarted. The delay of a government agent killed on the way with the good news, or withholding the news until the final slave-driven cotton harvest can be brought in for profit. What did this new freedom bring? Slaves made free to do what? Absolute equality of rights and rights of property between master and slave? New relationships forged between employee and employer. Free but not free. Slave but not freeman, now free in the country we do not know or understand, freedom that left broken families broken, broken tongues and languages lost, a broken spirit, a new status on paper, or not, of falsities that our own lives would be the same, a nation bathed in the idea that whiteness is superior, that it is the final goal, the ultimate state of being. A new life without simple protections afforded most Americans. We celebrate the end of human trafficking, except it wasn't. Making an unhealthy contract, a perilous or corrupted deal with the devil, yielding futures that have remained little changed. A new life, coupled with complaints, complications, complicity, conflagrations, confusions, counterfeit protection, because someone must still be the lowest caste. We see with clarity that the languorously moving march to freedom with laws that wholly protect all citizens has brought about the de-evolution of the American spirit. This involuntary arch brings us into a new era, but by our own choosing also drags with it broken shards of past centuries of hate, so that we can continue with the detrimental obsession that rightness is whiteness. 2 years and now 2 centuries later, our lives remain virtually unchanged. The patrollers are dressed differently. They have traded in their tattered rags for riot gear, swapped out their whips for tasers and bullets, but our lives remain unhelpfully and unhealthily the same.
Wow.
Every time I read anything from this book, it begs of me to sit in a moment of silence and just acknowledge it. Thank you for doing that with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I'm gonna have to write that down because I'll forget the
Yeah,
name of the book
yeah.
before I get home.
And please, afterwards, if you want to look through it, please, I'm going to leave it up here. Feel free to look through it, flip through it, read through it too. But without further ado, Logan, Andrew, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for
Hi.
joining me here.
Thank you for having me and us.
I say that as if Logan was not the person who chose this
I
collection
know.
of people to be
I
up
know.
here today.
It is nice though because we're flipping spots, right? You're
That's
asking the
true.
questions instead of
Yeah.
answering. So this is 2 weeks in a row that I just get to answer. It's nice.
Yeah, it's great. Good for you. I'm glad you did this.
I know. Daniel showed me the questions like 15 minutes ago, so you will get very unfiltered.
And I just have to say, this is way outside of my comfort zone, so I appreciate all of the grace that I know you guys are going to give me.
You're already doing great.
Oh,
you.
so
Thank
good.
you. But yeah, so let's just dive right in, because I'm not good with small talk. I just want to cut right through to the meat, the meat and the potatoes. I tend to be a person who's easily inspired by everything around them. I can look at a plant, find a cool bug, take a picture, and then think about it for weeks at a time later, and then get inspired. But anyway, so what inspires you? Are there any like artists or thinkers or friends, public or political figures that you really look up to or find inspiration from?
Wow, great question.
The shortest answer is yes to all of that. There's various things in all those realms that at least inspire me. I don't know if you care if I go first on this.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to have the opportunity to mention my favorite band twice today
Yes.
in church. So I mentioned this morning the band Me Without You. I think this past week was the 10th year anniversary of their album called Pale Horses, which was a series of songs kind of tangentially related to the end times, but it told through the lens of the lead singer and songwriter's dad passing away. And so it remains probably my favorite album of theirs because it has stayed so prescient, especially in recent times. Many of the songs having apocalyptic imagery and relating to current political systems and things like that. That has been something that has constantly been a source of, I guess, solidarity in these feelings of overwhelmment, I guess, and things that are going on right now. So being reminded of that in this past week has been very nice, very, inspirational in the sense that we're not alone in these feelings.
Yeah.
And these feelings aren't necessarily new either.
Yeah. We're not the first and won't be the last to feel the things that we're feeling.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, I'll say one in the political first because I have a couple different answers. But the first one, honestly, is Bernie Sanders. Sincerely. And the funny story behind it is what most people don't know is I resisted any way supporting Bernie in 2016 just because I was in a bullshit headspace that I regret. But I took this political test and it said I am most aligned with Bernie Sanders. I'm like, I don't like Bernie Sanders. What are you talking about? But apparently I aligned with his thinking though. But one of the reasons I like him is you can find clips of him from the early thousands and forever, and he's been very consistent on what he's been advocating for, and especially with the three of us as queer people, has been warning kind of the playbook that would occur to each of us. Has really been sounding that alarm. There's this really good video in 03 where it's like, for what just happened yesterday, it's like, they're going to make an enemy out of these innocent people.
Yeah.
For these things to happen, right? And make an enemy out of us because we use the word pride and because we like a rainbow. Yep. And I do find that really inspiring and helping me in standing firm. So that, that's one of my answers for sure. Second one would be Becky Albertalli, who has written some of the best queer fiction I've ever read in my life. So she was a psychologist and wrote a lot of fiction based upon conversations, like inspired by conversations she would have with people she was a psychologist for.
Are there any works of hers that we might know?
Of course, Simon versus the Homo sapien Agenda, ring a bell. some of my favorite ones are like "What If It's Us," "Here's to Us." New one just came out that I haven't read yet, so I can't recommend it
Fair
because I
enough.
haven't finished it. So those are some good ones for me.
That's really cool. To kind of pivot, heard about your inspirations. Let's talk a little bit about your experience. What was your first experience like meeting a queer person? Like, who was the first gay or queer or trans person that you met, and how did that impact you?
Yeah, I'll go first on this one. So this is kind of a funny story. Like, the first queer person I met was the first person I hooked up with. And so I figured out my own queerness, and I'm like, gosh, I'm probably 8 or 9 at this point. And so, like, I didn't know, because, like, you know, I lived in this, I mean, really, really small town, smaller than Wilmore. And it was, like, just a known this was wrong. And so the first person that I met in that way was someone that I hooked up with. And then the next set would be my peers who felt the same way. Because, like, they really restricted that. I mean, it was the 90s, so, like, it was hard. I mean, the only times you saw really queer relationships were, no joke, on soap operas. So it was kind of a hard time.
Wow.
So I figured it out through my peers.
Yeah.
I had somewhat similar experiences. I think mostly in high school was when people kind of started to just tiptoe into being visibly queer in some way. And this was obviously before I really had much of the ability to think about that for myself.
Yeah.
I was very, very, very Christian at that point. But, you know, I met, there was actually a guy who came to my karate dojo who was
Fancy.
queer, out, you know, visibly, you know, didn't mind talking about themselves that way. And he and I would kind of spar on kind of religious things. You know, he was kind of the edgy high school atheist kind of guy.
Everyone's got one.
Yeah,
Every high
yeah.
school's
And
got
so
one.
we talked more about that than about sexualities or anything like that. But it was never like, I mean, I'm sure I probably felt a little annoyed by them every now and again, but like it was kind of playful in that way. And,
Yeah.
you know, there was an aspect of like, you know, this is just a person, you know? And I had never really had the kind of church upbringing that said, you know, fire and brimstone, hellfire for those who are against the Lord in this way or anything like that. Disciples of Christ denomination is actually pretty chill about a lot of that kind of stuff, at least verbally. I'm not sure about their actual beliefs, but from the pulpit, I never really heard that kind of thing growing up.
I actually didn't know that. That's good to know.
They're-
Bare minimum, but
They're kind of in the mainline sect of Christianity. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Church of Christ is not disciples of Christ. I'm talking about disciples of Christ. Yeah. So yeah, So my experience with queer people is just kind of in high school finding out, oh, this person's gay. I was like, oh, okay. Interesting. I don't know what it was about that experience. You know, obviously there was homophobia where I grew up, but in a lot of my day-to-day, it was just like, oh yeah, you kind of find out, yeah, this person's gay. I was like, oh, okay, sure. It was oddly, I don't know whether it was an intent to kind of like just sweep things under the rug that we didn't really want to talk about, or if it was actually this air of we're all just kind of chill with it, but it wasn't. I don't know. I look back on it. Maybe there's some rose-colored glasses with it, but I don't remember there being a whole lot of like vitriol around a lot of it, which I'm actually really grateful for.
yeah, I was about to say that's not often the experience.
Yeah.
And at the very least, I mean, so much of the media that we consume
That's right.
or have historically consumed does not depict that kind of a high school experience.
And I can only speak from my own perspectives in it. You know, I'm sure there was bullying and stuff that occurred because of all of that. You know, I also knew people in high school who didn't come out until they were out of college. Or in college, you know.
Don't worry, my high school was very Shakespearean.
Oh, I'm sure.
People were so mean. They were so mean. And I didn't even feel like I suffered the brunt of that. Mine was mostly an accusation, but there were people I knew who were, I mean, berated. Like, I don't actually know how they graduated and did it. Like, it's really a tragedy. truly is a tragedy. So it's kind of funny, right? Like that media description
Right.
did feel like
Accurate.
somewhat accurate. Yeah.
Wow.
Probably over exaggerated.
Right, but I mean, it's media. Of course,
Yeah.
there's going to be a little
There's
bit
still
of
truth in it, though.
exaggeration.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Do you keep up with high school peers? or-
So I was such a social outcast because I was a combination of queer. I was a nerd. I did not really fit in, but I will say I've had a couple interactions post in the last few years of like people who figured out they were a queer leader and other things, and so like got to like reconnect with them on that level, mostly through Instagram, admittedly.
Hell yeah.
You know, but I'm like, we're never there, so like I don't really run in those circles. I live on the note to self, don't be gay in Indiana kind of vibe.
And you are so right for that, actually.
Unfortunately, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, because a lot of my high school experience was very much in an evangelical, very Christian space, like Daniel, I was so Christian.
Oh, I believe you.
Like the most Christian. Like
Were you a Theo bro?
no,
Adjacent?
maybe adjacent.
Yeah.
I dipped my pinky toe in
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But there wasn't enough of a culture of that, I think, for me to get into that, thankfully. But very much like youth group every Sunday. I found other youth groups to go to during the week on
Oh.
Wednesdays.
Wow.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
And I think because of that, there are some friendships I still have from high school. You know,
Yeah.
people I don't talk to all that often, but there are a lot of people that I ended up either just by happenstance or by the slow changing of my perspectives just kind of ended up distancing from.
Yeah.
Not because of any explicit experience of like, you've changed your ways, I'm going to wag my finger at you now or anything, but just like, these are spaces I don't really find compelling anymore. These
Yeah.
are spaces that don't speak to me in the same way they once did when I felt like I needed to be there
Yeah.
to please the Lord. So, yeah.
Not please the Lord. Oh, no.
Man. Well,
She wasn't the catalyst of all that.
Is there anything that you wish you were told as a queer child or a queer teenager that you would have found helpful? I know that's a loaded question.
I think I mentioned a second ago how, at least my experience was, as people came out, especially in high school, I feel like from my adjacentness to a lot of their bravery, it didn't feel like there was a lot of vitriol around it publicly. Again, I'm sure bullying and all that shit occurred because kids can be shitty. But like, I guess I wish I heard though from authority figures, from adults, you know, these are things that these are people who are just people.
Yeah.
You know, there was implicitly I felt like, you know, these are just aspects of these people. There's not, you know,
Right.
there isn't like some specific sin in their life or anything like that making them be a certain way. It's just this is just a part of their lives.
Yeah.
But to have heard that in some way from the top down, from someone in authority.
Right.
And I think that was maybe the biggest omission from my life growing up, is just generally it wasn't a thing that was really discussed. There were many things that just didn't get talked about, either intentionally or unintentionally. There was a very much a keep the peace kind of vibe. And I think, and maybe I'm talking to a culture that just wasn't there yet at that point, but I think being braver about a lot of that would have helped a lot of people, myself included, just explore and just figure themselves out. You know, I said this morning in church that I felt like I had to be something very specific. And again, that didn't actually come from my family or anything. That was just my intuiting what I heard from my peers who were also very Christian,
Yep.
my youth group leaders. I had to be this Christian man.
Yeah.
And by implication, that omitted a lot of other things that were in my head, in my
Yeah.
life. And hearing that you wouldn't have to adhere to this specific picture would have been a very helpful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, two things on this. One is, first and foremost, culturally, at that time, it was you're on your own, kid. So that is just how the culture was, right? And that was with any conflict, not just unique to queerness. Is like bullying was an accepted part of the culture, and I was very fortunate that I had family members who didn't handle that particular piece well. They didn't. The problem is like they didn't know what to do either, which is why that was just so dominant of you're on your own and you have to figure this out. And I felt an added pressure with that of like, this is culturally unacceptable. So if you feel like you're on your own now, which is how you feel, if you live it, you're really on your own because you are going completely against every single societal norm that's accepted. And it could have been exaggerated by my proximity, right? That may not have been the case for other people in other spaces, but where I grew up, in the culture of what I was around, I was for sure an outcast in that particular situation. And even compared to Asbury, the number of queer people I knew growing up was far less than even whenever I was in college. So if you think about that short span of difference, that was a huge part of it. What I really wish I could hear, because you can't change culture, but I wish people could tell me that I could face it. That I could face it and that it was going to be okay. Because I never heard that. I felt a lot of love from family members who held me when it was hard. I'm not saying I didn't feel loved, because I did. But I never really heard the phrase that you can face it, you'll find your people. It may not be here.
Right.
And as painful as that may have been to hear at the time, if someone had told me that sooner, I probably could have saved myself decades of heartache and decades of making every wrong fucking decision imaginable. Because I made a shit ton because I didn't know what to do. So that I really wish I had heard someone had just said that I could face it. Even though I may not get through that facing growing up. And I think that is still true, tragically, for all progress made. I think that's just something in queer people in general that until culture really changes, I unfortunately think that's going to be the tragic thing. That's not going to be unique from my growing up time to present, despite the moves culture that have been made.
Something that you and I obviously have talked a lot about, and that I mentioned to you just before we came in here, was the idea that we are cartographers.
That's right. It's tattooed on my arm.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to get some kind of tattoo about it. But the idea that queer people are kind of writing their own maps right now. This is uncharted territory because there isn't a whole lot of cultural, I don't know what the word is, a blueprint for how to grow up in this and how to be okay and, how to just live and be without drama and, misunderstandings from the culture around you. This is a lot of brand new territory for a lot of people just because of where culture has not accepted this in the past.
And we have to reckon with the fact that they don't want to give us the utensils to mark our spot on the map. We have to bring our own.
And I think also every time we, as a queer culture, as a queer people, have made a mark on the world, that mark is so full of pain and suffering.
That's right.
That it is really difficult for us to imagine a life that is not full to the brim of pain, suffering, heartache, heartbreak, all of those things. So I'm fighting tears like hearing you say that, because both of the messages that you've shared are something that I longed to hear and realized that I needed to hear growing up too.
Damn it.
Stop it. I'm not going to cry at
I'm
this stage.
sorry.
It's hard.
But also, crying is good.
Yes.
It releases good brain, almost said drugs, but they're not drugs, hormones.
It makes me see the little sadness from inside out because it makes me feel better about it when I cry.
Yes. Yeah. And kind of going along with what you wished you heard, what do you wish that the straight cis Christians knew about queerness, or more specifically about your experience with being queer? Because I know we are not monoliths. We are a representation of us, not of queer people or our labels.
Yeah.
I'm kind of eating my words now, but I hope that made sense.
We are. Gay is not one specific thing that you can just pin down, or queer,
Exactly.
or anything like
Yeah.
that. That's kind of the essence of what queer is. It is
Yeah.
outside of the norm in a way.
Yep.
Yeah.
That said, can you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry. What do you wish that the straight cis Christians
yeah.
knew about queerness?
I think just that. I think that queerness is inherent in humanity because humanity is not a monolith. There is no like one picture of what a human is, regardless of how many racists or bigots would like there to be an
Yeah.
idealized picture of the human being. It's so much of that is pseudoscience from like the 17 and 1800s that was meant to keep other races and people groups down, and there is no one human being that is ideal. Queerness is in fact in my idea, the best representation of humanity, because it is our differences, our uniqueness, everything that is a deviation from the straight line is more colorful. It's more I'm not trying to say queer people are better than straight people.
We are more
Probably
colorful.
not
I will
saying
claim
that.
that. We are
Probably
more
not saying
colorful.
that.
We are more colorful.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll claim that one.
But just that and there's so many layers behind this kind of stuff, but if I could just get people to understand that this is just an expression of humanity as it is. We grow, we reproduce, we continue to change and morph over time, and this is the byproduct of that, and this is the beautiful outpouring of what every person can uniquely be.
Yeah.
And again, there's layers to these ways of thought that prevent people from
Absolutely.
seeing that kind of thing, and I know I'm hitting at something that is like culturally entrenched in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
And so it's even hearing those words, probably people would probably agree with that generally. But to
Right.
have that and apply it to the queer community, suddenly there's a barrier there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel so fortunate, even before I really understood my own queerness, that my experiences with queer people were not, I was never told like that specifically is bad. It was, there were cultural things that I knew that was like, some people probably aren't okay with that, but like, it never occurred to me to demonize someone because of that. And maybe that was partially because of a healthy dose of Christian self-hatred in myself. It's like, I don't want to demonize anybody else because I don't like me, and I don't want to put that anywhere else either.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be a little bit more blunt here. It's like, I was all in, and you had me. And the minute you sniffed anything that was out of line of your expectations, that was not good enough for you. And what I would really say is like, I'm kind of terrified to think about the ways I would think had they actually been in any way, shape, or form accepting or indifferent or didn't care. What would I believe today? We have this whole deconstruction and reckoning because of a literal reaction to utter refusal to let people in, right? And so like the Bell Hooks quote of like queer is being about the self that is at odds with everything around it. Like we kind of had to claim that. We kind of had to claim being at odds with everything around it because society said we weren't good enough to be in the first place. We look at the political realm, and it took until 2012, 2013 before any politician, even if privately, they thought it was fine to actually publicly state that they affirmed a group of people. So basically knowing until 2013 that politically every move was going to be against you. Let alone what churches did, which is a whole layer farther. And the worst part is like, I was all in, and you kicked me out anyways. So for those of you who knew me at that time, like you couldn't ask for someone who was trying harder to be all in and give them everything that they had. Like, I was trying to give it everything I had, but because of this one thing, it was not good enough.
Yeah.
And so, like, what I want to tell people is, like, if you're expecting people to meet some bullshit margin of heaven that you've fabricated out of your own brain that's not even real margins, you're just going to lose people hand over fist.
Yeah.
So that's really my answer. It's a little bit more crass.
No, but it's real and it's raw and it's honest.
Yeah.
And it's yeah.
Because think about it, and sorry to point this out, but like, they fired people at the university we went to for supporting them. Not because they were in a queer relationship, but for just support.
Yeah.
Like, that's how extreme this goes. That's what happens.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. And yeah. That honestly feels like a conversation that is deserving of a whole
I know.
Yeah, maybe
separate
put a star next to
podcast.
that question.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah. Let's leave that there.
Oh my god. I am actually going to put a star by this question.
Yeah, do it.
Oh my goodness.
Good call.
Yeah. So you both have kind of mentioned or alluded to the fact that your queerness has been a journey, or you coming into your queerness has been a journey. Throughout this journey of realizing and accepting your queerness, how, if at all, did your perception of or your relationship with God or the like higher spiritual aspect of our lives, how did that change or how did that morph as you were accepting your queerness?
Oh, wow.
I know. Once again, a loaded question. But
So loaded.
I'm going to be mean for a second.
do it. Oh, I'm here for it.
I began my queer journey years after I finally began to tear down this view of God as something that existed or cared at all. For me, my view of a God that sees my life was also a view of a God that is constantly disappointed in my life. And so I had already begun a journey just personally of being like, what if I didn't give a shit about this stuff that I feel like is the most important thing in the world?
Yeah.
What if I just stopped for a moment? And so it's stuff I alluded to this morning in Beaumont. What if I just took a breath for a second? What if I just calmed down as much as I know how and breathed? And once I was able to do that, once I was able to kind of tear down this picture of a God that like is intimately involved in people's lives, but is also kind of really wanting us to do better all the time, what if I just lived?
Yeah.
What if I took the principles of what I knew from all of that, applied it to day-to-day life as best I could, and simply tried to live and love as best as I knew how? And I think once I got there, once I tore down those old pictures and everything, I was able to see, maybe there's more to me than I ever would have given myself permission to realize. Maybe, why am I jealous of my roommate going on a date with someone? What the hell's going on there?
Favorite story of all time.
No.
Yeah. Maybe a different time, but
Yeah.
but that, to me, oh goodness gracious, sorry, John. It took tearing down every image I had of a real God
Yeah.
to get there. And that's what I alluded to earlier with how entrenched this stuff is in a lot of evangelical culture. I had to basically start from ground zero. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure what I've built up from there yet. But I had to start anew to give myself permission to fully find me. And that's still hard.
Oh, yeah.
It's still hard. You know, I say it as though I've like arrived, finish line.
No.
I'm me. No. I'm still frightened of what I might be. I'm still insecure and all that stuff every day. But it was true freedom for me. I'm not applying this to anybody else. I'm not prescribing this to anybody else. But there was true freedom for me in just kind of starting over in a lot of ways.
That's really cool.
I think the beauty of your question is that there's so many things that you can do as a group, right? But I think that particular question you just asked is really up to the individual, because even ours is slightly different.
Yeah.
So I got booted out of the house, so I said, fuck it, I blew it up. And I said, where do I go now? What does next look like now, right? Like they said you're not welcome in this. I blew that up. I left it all behind. It's not even, it wasn't even something I was tempted to look back at because it just had to go. And then slowly but surely realizing that like most of my life has been questioning what space I go into, right? Because I didn't know how to be myself anywhere. So much of it for me was realizing that belonging means you belong everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. And so I don't ever feel a sense at home of any place because there's no certitude in anything. Right. I don't feel certain in any space I go into. What I know is like right now, these are the places I am and these are the people I want to be and I want to be around, and these people shape me and change me. So much of it was like the whole thing had to start over, right? My community had to change, the people I was hanging out with, the things that I found interesting changed, the types of books that I read. For the first time in my life, like I let my body lead me when I walked into a space and I went, all right, my brain thinks 10,000 things, but how do I feel?
Yeah.
Like, how do I feel in this space right now? Does it feel right? Does something feel off? Like, I gave myself permission to actually factor in other parts of me other than, oh, I mentally agree with that.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I mentally think this person looks cool or this person would be a good vibe for me for some arbitrary reason. Instead, I've learned my queerness just keeps me as a constant change agent. And sometimes I can be lonely, honestly.
Right.
It really can be. But sometimes it can be really uplifting and gratifying. And I feel grateful because for the first time I feel like I'm finding myself in a process, right?
Yeah.
I've not found myself. Oh dear God, that's too far. But I'm in process of discovering who I am. You know, things that you heard before, they felt different. You know, it was so funny. Just even in the movies I used to watch where I needed them for like this emotional escapism in college. Now I can watch it and I can see a beauty in it that I couldn't see before, right? So like a lot of my life has been rereading things, re-listening to things, letting my eyes see a tree differently than I could see it 5 years ago. And that's really what that's about. And somehow in the midst of all of that, there is some kind of, there's God in that. How that looks like, I don't know. Ask me in an hour, right? And then I'll probably change my mind the next time you talk to me. But for now, I found a lot of peace in that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you both for your vulnerability. I know that that's a very personal thing to share.
Yeah.
And thank you for the courage and the grace in sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I want to end with this question. What does queer mean to you?
Oh, wow.
Merriam-Webster defines queer. No.
Shoot, I should have had that pulled up. Oh, no.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so you did say earlier, you showed me these questions like 15 minutes before we started. And the first thing that came to my mind was just authenticity.
Yeah,
Queerness is just embracing all the various parts of me.
that's right.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, you know, obviously that's culturally right now defined around who you love, how you identify yourself. All very valid and good things. And I think broadly, just more than that, it's just being me, being us.
Yeah.
Because inevitably, we're all kind of queer. If you get down to brass tacks, there's no, what is normal? What is the line?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
You know?
right.
And, you know, and I don't in any way want to diminish the actual, like, LGBTQ queer community in saying that. But I think everyone is queer in some way or
That's
fashion.
right.
And living in that, understanding that, is just how you embrace your truest self. And for me, that's what being queer is just embracing me when I didn't allow myself to for so long.
That's so well said. Yeah. And I'm going to just add to that because I think that's so right with the bell hooks quote that I think is right. It's the thing that is at odds with everything around it. Because that's really what it's been for me. It's like when I have found myself is when I'm literally at odds with what's around me. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is part of my becoming. This is how I step into authenticity, is I just recognize what's going on that's different around me, you know, and it's looking at everything differently. And it's also just, we're a fucking family because, like, we have a lived experience that not everyone can say they have, and we're strongest whenever we can gather around each other and hold each other when things are hard and do those hard things together, because we are a family in it.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the queer, because it includes people that maybe would have previously been excluded.
Yeah. The chosen family.
That's right.
Yeah. Maybe queer is the people and places we find along the way.
That's right. That's right. You know, that's our way of queering the air, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, and thank you to you all for being here. I did want to end on a prayer, and I wasn't sure exactly where this conversation was going to go. I actually left out a couple of questions, partly for time, partly because they didn't fit with where we were going. But surprisingly, this prayer that I picked out right before, I think kind of fits. So, God who reclaims, we have known what it is to feel helpless, to have our agency stripped and our voices snuffed out. We are grateful to those who have shown us that on the other side of our trauma, abuse, and grief, there can be power magnified. Bind the will of oppressors and abusers. Remember your promises to the vulnerable, poor, marginalized, and immigrant, to raise us up in honor and lead us from captivity. We have been forgotten for so long. Do not forget us, God. Subvert the propaganda imparted by the white capital patriarchy and deliver us into a rich ecosystem of diverse power expressions. Speak gently into the hearts of those recently removed from harm. Keep us from punishing ourselves for what has been withheld from us. It is not our fault. We reclaim what's ours.
Heck yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
So let these words go with you today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I really don't know how to end this, so I'm just going to play music.
Yay. Good work.